Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, we're diving deep into the world of Flutter State Management. Specifically, we're looking at the provider, one of the core components within the Riverpod package. Riverpod stands out as a powerful state management solution in Flutter ecosystem, and it even comes highly recommended by Flutter team themselves. So if you're aiming to build a complex applications in Flutter, understanding and harnessing Riverpod is crucial. Here we are at the official docs of Riverpod, and as it clearly mentions, the provider is the most fundamental of all providers. Its primary role is to create and expose values, and the advantages of using the provider includes caching computations, making a value accessible to other providers, simplifying testing by allowing widget or provider overrides, and lastly, optimizing performance by reducing unnecessary rebuilds for providers and widgets. So for those who want to deep dive into each of these advantages, the official Riverpod documentation has an excellent examples that you can experiment with. But for this video, we'll focus on the most common use cases for provider. In Flutter, when you create a class and want to use it elsewhere, you typically instantiate that class. This works fine if the class is only used in just one place. But imagine wanting to access the same class in multiple parts of your app. Multiple instances means multiple separate instances of that class, which isn't efficient or recommended. So how can we manage this better? This is where Riverpod's provider shines. By creating a provider for a class, you essentially create a reference to that class. So every time you access this provider from any part of your app, you're tapping into that single instance of the class, eliminating the need for multiple instances. It's simply more efficient. Here is the auth repository class I've created for authentication purposes. This holds all the API used to talk to Firebase auth service. And this class is used everywhere within our app, like sign in and sign out, updating user info, and reading the value of the user. As you can see, this sign-in service class depends on the auth repository class, and we have instantiated it to be able to access its methods. And here in the home screen, we're instantiating it once again to access the user info. This redundancy is what we aim to address by using the provider. Our goal is to establish a single reference that we can tap into whenever we need to utilize the auth repository class, thereby eliminating the need for multiple instantiations. But before we write any Riverpod code, we need to install Flutter Riverpod. And if you're using Flutter hooks, what you need to install is the hook Riverpod instead, to ensure compatibility between Riverpod and Flutter hooks. After we have installed Flutter Riverpod, we need to wrap our app with provider scope. So let's go ahead to our main function to do that. Once everything is in place, it's time to define our Riverpod provider. And take note that Riverpod providers are global. So let's have to define it globally. There you go. Let's now go ahead and use this provider in our sign-in service class, which depends on the auth repository class for user sign-ins. To be able to read the value of provider inside this class, we need to inject the ref object. And there you have it. Our sign-in service class now relies on the provider, eliminating the need for instantiation. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to remove the auth repository object that we have instantiated in our home screen, and use the auth repository provider that we have just created. And to watch the value of provider inside our widget, what we need is the widget ref object. And to make the widget ref object available, we need to transform our stateless widget into consumer widget. Okay, let's refresh our app. And there you have it. The UID is seamlessly displayed into our UI. Another common usage of this provider is when passing an object to another widget. So let me illustrate this with an example. Here, I have a list view builder that displays a list of fruits. This list uses custom list style as its item builder. And as you can see, we're passing each fruit to custom list style, which causes the widget to a non-const constructor. While this code works and grammatically correct, there's a potential performance concern. Imagine if you have a large list and each custom list style is a complex widget with a deeply nested child widgets. If something triggers the list view to rebuild, every custom list style will also rebuild. That can impact performance. A solution for this is instead of passing the fruit as a parameter, we can pass it using a provider. This allows our custom list style to be const, which enhances performance since it won't rebuild needlessly. So to demonstrate how this works, let's go ahead and implement it on our list view. First, we'll define a provider for our fruit. We can name it fruit provider. Since this provider starts without a value, we can throw an unimplemented error. Although, if you can provide a default value, it's better to provide a default value. For instance, an empty string could be our default value here, but I just wanted to show you the process where default values aren't straightforward. After defining our provider, we'll go to custom list style and wrap it with provider scope. By doing so, we gain access to the override method of the provider scope, allowing us to override our fruit provider, passing the fruit index as its value. Next, inside custom list style, we'll watch the value of fruit provider within the build method. With those steps completed, let's refresh our app. There you go, everything appears the same. But now, we're passing the fruit via provider, turning our custom list style into a const constructor, which enhances performance. Using provider like this is plain and simple. But with the introduction of Riverpod Generator in Riverpod 2.0, it makes our lives as a developers even easier. Code Generator is a game changer because it ensures that we create providers correctly, reducing the risk of errors. Given the myriad of providers Riverpod offers, it can be sometimes overwhelming to choose the right one. But with the Riverpod Generator, much of the guesswork is eliminated. Now, let's see how this code generator works in action. Instead of manually creating our provider, we'll let Riverpod's code generator do the work. First, to use the code generator, we need to install build runner and Riverpod generator under our dev dependencies, and add the Riverpod annotation to our dependencies. Once those are installed, we can run dart run build runner watch in our terminal. With the build runner active, we'll transform the auth repository provider we manually created into a code-generated one. To save time writing the provider structures, you need to add Riverpod snippet in your extensions. After that, let's import Riverpod annotation inside the file where we want to define our provider. We also need to add the Riverpod part up here so that it will generate the g.dart file for us. And the simplest way to do that is to use our Riverpod snippet. Now, using our snippet, let's create the provider structure. Let's select here the Riverpod keep alive because our auth repository class should always be active and not disposed of. So once you hit enter, the snippet provides us with the structure to fill out. The syntax is different from our manual provider, so be cautious. So the first part is the return type of the provider. In this case, auth repository. And then the name of the provider you want in camel case. But take note that you shouldn't be adding the provider suffix when naming your provider, because the code generator will be the one to handle that for us. So in our case, let's give our provider a name auth repository. And then here at the ref parameter, you can simply copy your provider name, prefix it to this ref object, and uppercase the first letter. After that, we can now simply return the auth repository class and save our file. Once you have saved your file, the code generator will now do the rest of the work for you. And as you can see, an auth repository.dart file was created here that contains the code generated. And as you can see, this works the same thing as the manually created provider. So we don't need to update or change anything that uses this provider. As an additional benefit of using this code generator, it gives us the ability to pass multiple parameters. Unlike the manually created one, you are limited to passing only one parameter. So that's it, guys. I hope you learned something from this video. If any part of this was unclear, do leave your questions in the comment section below. If this video add value to your Flutter journey, show some love with a like, share, and subscribe to our channel.